be addressed in the same order as you see up there on page 4. There are many factors that are responsible for that. The main reasons for that would be the staging and or sequencing of construction can make it more practical and cost efficient to group various needs together and do them at the same time. You have state and city code requirements that also impact the planning, as well as the size, scope, and our fundraising capabilities that all have to be taken into consideration when we address our congregational needs. Given that, our needs as expressed by you centered around number 1, upgrading heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. As Pastor Chris has already pretty covered well. Our boilers are over 40 years old. They've lasted far beyond their expected service life. We're spending a lot of money each month just keeping them running. Our air conditioning equally has some age issues and really only covers certain areas of the church building. New heating and air conditioning we would expect to really reduce our energy and our repair costs, as well as improve our servicing of the building. Number 2 on your list is improve and expand the staff office spaces. You know, as our church and congregation grow, so does our staff. And our staff offices need to be reviewed for their functionality and their efficiency. Improving these issues will improve our staff's ability to support and help the congregation and our community. Number 3 on your list, you'll see modernize our kitchen facilities. Our kitchen is rather outdated and not as functional as it should be. As we all know, our meal outreach ministry has grown substantially and has outgrown the capabilities of our current kitchen. Our current kitchen also struggles when we hold large congregational meals and events to really support it in the way that we would require. So new thoughts and new designs there would help us with our mission. Number 4 on your list, additional education space. Our congregation, again, has grown, and so has the needs of the many groups and functions that use this space. Providing them with the space and the amenities that they require can be challenging even on a day-to-day basis, but sometimes we have far more demand for space and meeting rooms than we can provide. Number 5 on our list is improve the music space. Music is an important part of the St. Matthew's ministry. Currently, the size and flexibility of our music space is struggling to handle the needs of the various groups that we have, the adult choir, the various children's choirs, and our handbell group. Number 6, address our security needs. You know, with the tragic events that we've seen across the nation in the past year and even right here in our own community, there's probably not a whole lot more we need to say about that. We need to ensure the safety of our congregation and community members that utilize our facility. Number 7, renovate the education wing. Believe it or not, our education wing is 50 years old now. And the meeting rooms and the bathrooms need to be updated. They're used, they've been well used, and they could use a little given back to them. And you'll also notice throughout today's presentation that the education wing is very important in fulfilling several of the other needs in the assessment. It holds the key for meeting rooms and choir rooms and many of the other functions we have. So it's a key component. Number 8 is upgrading technology. Technology is an important part of achieving all of our congregational wants and needs. Technology helps to support our ministry by maximizing the benefits and the services that we have. It's an ongoing process, but in a large project like this, we also need to make sure that we incorporate the best of what's available out there to help us achieve the wants and desires of our congregation. Number 9, move and improve the nursery area. The location of our current nursery isn't exactly optimal for worshiping families with small children. And our goal is to improve the functionality and the convenience of the nursery. Number 10, improve recycling in the donation area. You know, 50 years ago, recycling really wasn't a term that a lot of us knew or used. But in today's world, it's a large part of what we do and how we function. And it wasn't originally comprehended in any of the original designs or modernizations in the past, but I think it really needs to. You can see the congregation has a substantial stake in recycling and supporting various other ministries, and we need the room in the area to accomplish that in a proper and efficient manner. That presents the needs assessment as defined by everyone. Thank you.
Great.
Well, good morning. I'm Ray Eisman, and I'm the co-chair of the Building Renovation Committee. I think Jerry did an excellent job of going back over the items that were identified during the needs assessment process, and we've talked about these in past meetings. I'm going to talk a little bit about how the Building Renovation Committee took those needs and developed a master plan to address each of those needs. The committee for the Building Renovation Committee, the names are listed on page 10 of the mailing that you received at home. So you can see all the members of our committee. The meeting that we had on January 7th was our 30th get-together. Most of these meetings have run at least 2 hours, and so most of our committee members have attended all the meetings, so they've done a very, very good job. So what did we do? Well, the Building Renovation Committee spent some of those meetings identifying an architectural firm for the development of our master plan. And we interviewed a number of, we've already talked about this in past meetings, but we had interviewed a number of architectural firms, and we settled on Zimmerman Architectural Group, which was a Wauwatosa-based company. They're now located in the Valley. And it turns out that one of our own members, Greg Zimmerman, is our lead architect on the development of the master plan. So what do we do? Well, we developed a master plan based on those needs. And we spent a lot of time in our meetings fine-tuning that master plan. And the results of that work are documented in the drawings that are shown in the mailing that's been sent out. Pages, I believe it's pages 6 through 9 show that. Now, sometimes architectural drawings can be a little bit confusing, and so I thought maybe what I would do is just take a minute and give a very high description of the various phases that are mentioned in the master plan. So the very high level description is, phase 1 is renovations. Phase 2 would be an addition to the east side of the education wing. Phase 3, very high level, would be an addition to the west side of the sanctuary, just north of the offices. So that's the very, very high level description. Now, let's go down a little bit further in our trying to understand what these drawings are telling us. Phase 1, renovations. What renovations are we talking about here? Heating and ventilating. Removing the stage area over here, which is really required for heating and ventilating equipment that we have to install over here. There's some there right now. We have to put some more equipment over there, so we're going to remove the stage and repurpose some of that space as classroom space. Number 3, a sprinkler system. This is a requirement that the City of Wauwatosa and the City of Wauwatosa Fire Department are going to enforce. our last renovation, we were able to avoid doing that investment in the future. We're not going to be able to avoid that during this year. Move the kitchen. We're going to move the kitchen. You'll see on the drawings, of course. We're going to move the kitchen over to this area over here, east of the youth room, into where Lois Weber's classroom is. That whole area where there becomes a new kitchen. So we're going to repurpose the old kitchen area and combine it with the existing office. So we'll have more office space. We can put our work equipment in that area. Build a new classroom. Some of you have gone back into the catacombs over here, east of the youth room. There's some nice windows there, and we can create a classroom in that area, which can be jointly shared with the kitchen. Be very good. Second floor bathrooms. As probably everybody knows, the second floor bathrooms are bathrooms, but they really do need to be updated and expanded and such. So, money permitting, second floor bathrooms. And then painting and decorating in the education wing. That's pretty much renovations. That's pretty much phase one. Phase two, adding an addition to the east side of the education wing. We'll have 3 floors. We'll add classrooms. We'll be able to, in addition to the east side of the education wing. Here is pointing to the area where that would happen. Doing that would allow us to move the nursery from the first floor to the second floor, a much more desirable location for the parents. And then there would be there'd be rearrangements to the music and the youth office as part of that phase 2 effort. Phase 3 would add a 2-story addition to the west side of the sanctuary, just north of the offices. It would allow us to do several things, including adding 3 more staff offices along the west side. It would allow us to create a reception area by the door, a reception area where a staff person would be able to see who's coming in the back door. And finally, we would gain another upper room. An upper room that could be combined with the existing upper room to make a much larger upper room. So that's sort of a high-level phase 3. That's what these drawings are trying to tell us. Now, of course, all of this is going to be based on fundraising, and and I think Jerry's already pointed this out, that, well, maybe some things might slide from a phase 1 to a phase 2 based on fundraising, what we can do. So, I'm going at this point to turn the meeting back to Admiral, who is going to conduct the important part of the meeting, which are the questions and answers. Some things I think we have to realize, there are going to be some questions that will come up that the Building Renovation Committee really can't provide an answer at this time. So we're going to scribe those down and, so that we capture them. Other things that we probably can't answer right away, we'll try. We have our experts over here, Mr. Tim Nelson, Greg Strand, and the rest of the Building Renovation Committee. So, Pat, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ray. We'd like to do one thing before we start the question and answer scenario. I'd like to ask Dylan Mann to come forward. Dylan is the chair of our Finance Committee, and will present, well, I'll let Dylan present, but all the numbers. Thank you.
I thought I dodged the bullet. I just want to reiterate something that Pastor Chris has started out with, is Rob Liddell, who's our treasurer, and the other members of the Finance Committee, I think would agree with what I'm saying. We are a very fiscally conservative bunch. Rob tends to skew very conservative when it comes to our finances, which I think we all appreciate. A couple of the other things that I do want to stress, and I think it's outlined on page 10 of the mailing, is that we as a congregation we're not committed to dollar amounts in phase one. Really what we're going to be looking for next Sunday at the congregational meeting is approval to proceed with the fundraising campaign. Based on, should you vote for the capital campaign to proceed, based on the initial results of that, the Finance Committee will review where we're at from what has been given to the building campaign, and also what's been pledged for over a 3-year period. And then based on that, we'll be able to assess what we are able to proceed with and what we can conservatively finance. We will never submit anything to this congregation that the Finance Committee thinks would make us as a congregation house poor or negatively impact any of our ministry. So, but pulling back a little bit, please pick up an annual report. I think they're out today. I just wanted to make a couple comments over my years on the Finance Committee and being a participant on that. We have a very generous congregation. I think our overall giving has been very consistent year over year. Although we were under budget this year compared to 2011, we were about even. For 2013, we are budgeting about a 3% increase in our giving. But overall, I just want to commend the congregation and encourage you to continue down that road. The other thing that I wanted to comment on was, in the absence of a building campaign, we still are continuing to get over $100,000 a year in giving towards building improvement, which is also pretty phenomenal, given that we haven't been doing any asks related to building. So I think on page 10, and I don't want to steal anybody else's comments, but the James Company, in their experience, given the size of our congregation and the strength of our congregation, believes that over a 3-year period we could raise about $1.5 million towards a building campaign. The other thing that I do want to reiterate is that these are phased approaches, and each phase is kind of a separate component, if you will. So we are not looking for the whole, when we take things to the congregation for a vote, we're really looking at phase 1, and depending on how the building campaign goes, we may have to break phase 1 into smaller components, and we'll know more as that campaign unfolds. So I believe, should the campaign move forward, we're looking at towards the end of summer, September, coming back to the congregation, and where we're at and what we're proposing from a finance committee. That's all I have.
Thank you, Dylan. Thank you, Dylan. Okay, at this point, we would like to open up to the congregation to answer your questions. If you're like me, I've asked a lot of questions throughout this process. So we've got folks with microphones. Please speak into the microphone when you ask your question so everyone can hear. I'll repeat that question so everyone understands, and then if I can answer it myself, I will. Otherwise, we'll find one of the many experts here that can help out. So What kind of questions might you have at this point? Ms. Gordon?
I've had an opportunity to see these,
It's going to be a really good question.
Now? There we go.
I can hear you now.
I've had an opportunity to look at these designs previously, and I am very impressed with the detail, the information that's identified in these programs. I think Greg Strand, not Zimmerman, Greg Strand, and his firm has done a great job of laying out the picture and the design. My question is on phase one. There obviously are very many different areas within the church structure, not only the original church, but also the education area that are going to be affected, including putting in the sprinkler system. Can we get a very high-level estimate from the committee how many months this particular construction is going to take if everything goes well?
Sure.
Because there are a lot of areas that are affected.
Sure, okay, so I'll repeat the question to make sure we're understanding. During phase one, you're really most interested in what the timeline is for moving through phase one. Is that fair?
Correct.
Okay. Who would be best? Tim? Thank you. Mike, for you?
I would say it's going to probably be phased because we don't want to take the whole church down at the same time. So we'll probably start, we'd redo the kitchen because there's really not much going on in there, and then you'd work towards it. So it could be 6 to 8 months would probably be the first part of the group. We'd probably do HVAC first. We're looking at possibly starting that if we have the right funds. Starting that next summer, probably August, September timeframe, and then working with the fundraising and then work right into the rest of the stuff after that. So it's kind of hard to tell, but it'd probably be about a 12-month process by the time you get the HVAC done and then work into the other things. So I don't know if that answers your question for the first phase.
And Tim, could I ask a follow-up question? Am I allowed to ask questions? I think that Gordon, and maybe some others may have the concern is as we move through this phase, what kind of disruptions could we see in the building? I mean, if some portion's unavailable, how would you characterize that?
Well, with any building project, there's going to be disruptions. We're going to try to minimize that as much as possible by doing phasing. We'll try to keep areas cordoned off so people can't get in there. If we take a room down, we'll make sure that the staff figures out where that group is going to go. If we take Lois Butler's room out, obviously her class has to go someplace. So we'll make sure that we know where that's going to move to. So,
Yeah, that's your question. Very good. Are there other questions?
Comment and a question. So first of all, I want to thank everybody that's been involved in this. I know it's a lot of time away from family, and this goes on top of what people are probably working on during the day. So I guess I was just looking for a comment on what will this enable us to do that we're not doing today, rather than making what we're doing today easier to do.
Sure, and I think what David's referring to is how do these physical improvements or changes impact our ministry, right? And Pastor Chris, you spoke to that earlier. Could you come? Do you mind?
Sure. So obviously the first major priority, that HVAC, which includes taking out the boilers over here that have been there forever. There's asbestos on them, we have to abate that, and all those kind of issues. That's kind of like getting a new engine on your current car. You don't feel any different, but you've got a new engine. So that it'll help us hopefully in terms of efficiency and cost. Otherwise, we've got a new boiler. You know, you don't get to really see it. Maybe we'll take people in there just to appreciate looking at it. Maybe we can put chairs in there. Yeah. A nice sauna lounge room. I don't know. So that doesn't really help us too much. Unfortunately, sprinklers, like was said, we got a pass on it last time, and we really shouldn't have, but we did. And kind of wish we had done some of that last time, because as we were ripping open the ceiling walls in the sanctuary, that would have been a perfect time to have gotten our sprinkler, and now we're going to have to really try to hide those wells so that people don't go, oh, look at the sprinkler. We've got a beautiful sanctuary, we want to keep it that way. So unfortunately, we have to do that, and you could also make the case that it makes us safer, and that's a good thing. So that helps us. Beyond that, your question really is getting into how does this affect ministry. So how does it affect ministry? In the 2000 renovation, I don't know if many of you know this, but in the floor over here next to the youth room, by the way, those are just temporary walls that we put up attached to shelves. We left that floor open for a potential future kitchen. So it was already intended in that 2000 to be a new kitchen in that space. So obviously having a new kitchen will support our meal ministry, and our meal ministry, we'll probably be talking about some more coming up, but it's going great guns. Huge things coming out of St. Matthew's with our meal ministry, and we want to support that and make sure it's got all it needs. I'm hoping to share other news coming up soon that will really be impressive, even more impressive than what we're currently doing. So the meal ministry is already needs to be supported, needs to be done better. I always laugh because there's a picture over here on the wall of ladies, and I'm guessing that's the 60s. It's the exact same kitchen. The cupboards are, go look at it sometimes, and they're all in their aprons. It's a wonderful picture of our past. But that kitchen has not changed. It's a very outdated kitchen. It's a very small kitchen. It doesn't support, even beyond our meal ministry, we try to do a youth auction dinner. It's a mess trying to function out there. So having a new kitchen where preparation is done next to the youth room, unfortunately tying into that original nursery where Lois Weber's Sunday school room will be necessary too, and help us to function better where cleanup is done in one section and food prep is done on the other. And then one little side note, this hallway out here really becomes a perfect space for serving. So as you close the doors, you've got a meal going on in here. You know, you can be lining up your trays and your cold water and be ready to bring it out. Things like that really will support having this space as a wonderful meal space with a kitchen over here. So that will support that much better. Now the benefit of losing the old kitchen over here is that really becomes perfect staff space. We can easily cut doors right into our current office. And in that office that is very tight right now with our staff, it'll function with that current kitchen as a much better space for copiers to be, keeping the noise in there. The hope is possibly even to make it into another space that can be used as a meeting room, but during the week for staff, it'll be used for when we bring in 8 people to do a mailing, like the mailing you got. You know, when people come in to help work on that, that will support that part of the ministry as well. Then there's all sorts of little side things that we gain from this, such as when we lose the stage, and part of that will be for mechanical space. The thought is to possibly do a partitioned door right essentially where Chris Capper is standing. Wave Chris for us. Hopefully everybody knows Chris. And Ed Bross, another important person in our congregation. Right where they're standing will be a pocket door that can be closed, and that becomes another Sunday school meeting space, even as a meeting is going on in here. So pieces like that, we will add some rooms, it will help us out. And I'm only talking about phase 1 here. Phase 2, obviously, adding a whole addition over there gets us 3 full Sunday school rooms. I'm sorry, phase 2. Phase 3 adds more office space and an additional major room above it that we hope to make the upper room tie into and make it into twice as big of a meeting room, which accommodates a lot of things. Am I missing anything in terms of building committee people? Other pieces that really it supports and helps us our ministry? So we add a few classrooms here and there, which gives us more flexibility. One little simple thing that you can do right now, when you go up that main staircase, our brand new main staircase that it's brand new, 13 years old. I keep calling it brand new. We've been living in it a while. When you go up that main staircase, on the last renovation, we sat there for a long time during those meetings trying to figure out how we can make it a better access into this room. And we went all over that and just kind of finally gave up and said, That'll be the next group's task. Well, as we've talked about it, one of the things you could easily do is the bottom step, you step up one step before you turn, you would go straight through essentially. Opening up that wall creates a pass-through, and you'll notice it right here. So this is coming in off of the parking lot. You walk past the offices, past the conference room, which you've got this main staircase right here. You would open up this wall here to go straight through, which creates a nice access point to the youth room, nice access point to the kitchen, nice access point to coming around to the nursery. It creates what we call a racetrack that you can get all the way through and back into this corridor, and it opens up the flow of traffic instead of coming all the way down here into the youth room or all the way around. It opens up more flexibility. Obviously, we want to keep that space looking nice still. We have a very nice looking stairwell there and wainscoting, and Pastor Gary would be proud that we're going to make sure we do the woodwork right. It's really important, but making it look nice, obviously, is really going to be important, and we factored that into some of the costs. So it's a simple little thing, but it improves the functionality of the building that much more. Any other points?
Do we feel like the kitchen space is going to be big enough in the future, given all the food programs and meal industries we have out of here? And
Do we feel like the space will be adequate for what we're trying to accomplish? Yes and no. Yes, it will be much better than what we have. No, because how big do you make it? I mean, is one of the questions. We potentially could have some really big stuff coming up. We could easily grow our meal industry, quadruple it, easily, almost tomorrow. We've held back on that because we really can't do it there. We could do it better over here, but then you start to go, you know, this is a church. It's not the best space for doing a major kitchen, and that forces you to start to ask other questions, like maybe there's a better space for that elsewhere. So you have to balance that. How big a kitchen do you make without going crazy, you know? And that's where we've stopped at this point and said, this is going to be a really good kitchen. It's got serving and cooking on one side, clean up on the other. It's got service space. It'll have coffee pots that you just hit the button and you've got your coffee right away. I mean, things like that that'll make this space much more functional for food. By the way, if your serving is going on over here, people can enter over here and you're not being bothered. You know, when you have your serving there, it's this bottleneck that happens. We've all experienced. So hopefully it'll function much better as a space. But it is a balancing act because you want to improve, you want to be better, and we've done that. It'll be bigger space, but at the same time, we're not going to go crazy on that. And if we need to go expand, then you start to have to ask different questions about, do you, for that ministry, rent an off-site warehouse that becomes that space? And we've talked about that. Right now, no. But if some things happen that possibly could happen, that you'll hear more about, hopefully, if it happens. Is that a teaser? Is that? That's my way of getting you to come to the annual meeting. Which we'll have lunch, by the way. That always helps too. So yes and no. Hopefully that answers that question. Anybody have more questions about that? Brad?
So obviously you're going to have to phase out the phases then, because you can't start turning this into office and do this as a kitchen at the same time. You have to build a kitchen first,
right,
before you can start doing this. And what other things are going to be affected in that same time frame?
There's definite major ways that you need to handle this. Like you said, you can't just take out your kitchen and not have it. You've got to build the kitchen first, but then of course in that kitchen space is a ton of storage. Where does that all go? You know, there's a whole process that will need to be discerned. I think Tim was the one that brought up the fact before also that with HVAC, we want to replace these boilers. Okay, they're ancient. It's obvious. It's been obvious for 15 years. Obvious to us. Every council I've been on since I've been here has been talking about it. 16 years. But to take them out in the middle of January is a bad idea, right? You know? unless we all bring our own portable heaters or something, I don't know. But, so you have to time that as well, and that's where we've discussed as a committee, would it be possible to take them out in the summer? Even though we're not quite ready for the whole campaign, we do have over $250,000 that people have contributed already in the fund, and that's approximately what that would cost. So would it be prudent to take the boilers out in the summer, get the new boilers ready for our heating season, and then at the heating season, take out the cooling part? And, you know, obviously certain things have to work with each other, and you have to do that. But that's been a major discussion that we've had as well. And I think we're going to need to do that unless we wait for the following summer to accomplish that. So, I don't want to be the only one answering questions here, so.
First, I'd like to start by thanking everybody on the building committee for all their hard work. I have involvements that take me away from home too, so I can appreciate the amount of time you put into it. Under phase one, you know, we're talking about replacing the boilers and updating the mechanicals in an effort to not only have a consistent heat source, but to ensure that it's not going to actually break down in the middle of winter. This goes hand in hand with things like doing a building envelope survey. You know, we've talked about the education wing is 35, 40 years old. I'm assuming the windows are probably that old. Have we looked into, if we're looking at building efficiency and updating our mechanicals, are we also looking at updating the whole building envelope to make ourselves more efficient in that regard? The other question that I had that is unrelated is when we talked about, I've talked with you guys before, heard about some of the building security issues that we are looking at, and I haven't seen anything on the drawings yet that would indicate something like a secured vestibule or anything of that nature at this point, because I'm assuming that's a relatively inexpensive way to secure the building for during the week and off hours.
Great.
Thank you. Very good questions. Okay, we'll go back to the first question. We didn't get into it time related, but as part of the process that we did, Zimmerman for the church, we did do a facility report on the entire building, all the phases. For those of you who don't know, the church is basically built in 5 major phases. So we went through, we did a breakdown, we looked at things, we looked at the age of the roof systems on all the different parts. We looked at comments on the window, masonry, tuck pointing, and the systems, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. So those are all part of a report that's been done to the church. And those are things that will certainly be considered as the phasing of construction goes on, but a lot of them are also part of your annual operating maintenance budget and things like that. As far as security goes, a very good question. We do have, and this is very conceptual, can everybody hear me without the microphone? Good. We do have a conceptual idea we looked at here of doing some kind of a secured vestibule off of here with direct supervision from the parking lot and of anybody coming in here, so you could lock the doors at this level of the church before anybody gets in. Whether or not this happens as part of phase one, it may not, but some of the things we have discussed to look at security are adding cameras and a system, doing electronic hardware so that people who do get into this point, we can lock down these doors, and we can lock down the doors upstairs at the top vestibule, so people can get into the church, but they can't go any farther than this vestibule and be monitored from the office. So that's part of the discussions, part of the thoughts we have had for security. Hopefully that answers it.
Phase 3.
Pardon me?
Phase 3, the reception area.
Well, phase 3, this was considered to be part of the design for what will happen. There's also another entrance here that would be locked down, but basically this would be reconfigured a little bit differently. But yeah, security is definitely something we've been keeping in mind in discussions.
Sure.
Two quick questions. Thank you for doing all this work. Will the addition of a sprinkler system and some updates of the mechanicals, will that lead to perhaps insurance premiums decreasing a little bit, maybe for the church? And second of all, with the updating of mechanicals, is there any ability as a nonprofit, I know those programs are being decreased throughout the state, but is there any ability for grants or anything like that, low-interest loans for updating for a church building like this?
Sure. I'll go ahead and take that question. As is every administrative change or initiative that the church takes on, those are questions that the Finance Committee and the Church Council consider on an ongoing basis. The intent is to continue to leverage any kind of advantage, either for additional coverage. If we initiate a program, we certainly always take a risk assessment and confirm that we're covered. If there are advantages to be taken from that, we're actively engaged in that. That's a fantastic question. In addition to leveraging advantages on the insurance side, also if there are grants, if there are any type of monies or incentives, or those are things that we have an active dialogue, and that's when it comes to financing and paying for the building, that's a how. That happens after the water, or actually not after, but ongoing. So if there are good economics for doing something, and if that initiative is supported by an incentive, financial incentive, then that's always taken into consideration and pursued. And in fact, we have as a council and with Pastor Chris's urgings, have engaged. How do I say this, Chris? Folks to really monitor what are the grant opportunities out there for us, and are we taking advantage of those? So that's part of the project.
Yeah,
that's a good question.
We might also comment. We have done a little investigation with Dale. Some of you may know that when we did our lighting and improvement process, we received grants from Focus on Energy. We received grants from Focus on Energy and We Energies when we put up our solar panels. And we will definitely, Cox is our mechanical expert, and we just talked about the fact that we'll explore all of the programs that are available through Focus on Energy as incentives for any of our projects to improve efficiency of our plant. So we'll definitely make sure we get our hands on anything that's available at the time that we do it. Dale, would you have anything else you might want to add?
Well, the only thing I would add is typically Focus on Energy, I mean, they're mandated to provide these programs, and every year they renew the same program. But they're typically pretty friendly to faith-based organizations and how they interpret their funds and their incentives. They get a lot more goodwill for their spend dollars because everybody in the room sees it versus doing a single proprietorship. So they've had a history of being very benevolent relative to other plans. They would write a custom plan for this. The other thing is, this is what I would consider to be low-hanging fruit for an application, because our boilers, Chris had a good analogy, they're like an old car. I think Kennedy was president when these were put in. So it's kind of like that Studebaker in Cuba. You know, so versus the new systems that we have, the differentials in energy are very easy to justify the program application. So it's likely we will optimize what that is to get back to a net position for what the congregation would have to do.
Thank you, Dale. And I think it's, in addition to making good decisions about efficiency and environmental impact, we do these for economic reasons. We do these because of the incentives that are out there. We also do it because it's the right thing to do for the environment. So all those things come together when we make these decisions. Hi, Carl.
Yeah, just ostensibly thinking outside the box and going beyond the building. I know that they've revisited properties, more property down the line for parking. Has there any been talk about property acquisition, visioning that for parking? I don't mean to get off the subject, but I'm thinking about an understanding with Lincoln School or whatever. I'm just curious. I don't need to get into a discussion about that, but has that been looked at?
Over the last many years, that has been the #1 issue. You'll notice it's not on our top 10, partly because in all of the things that you mentioned, we've come up against brick walls on Lincoln is not interested in letting us use their parking lot. We thought it'd be a great exchange to let them use our parking lot for their teachers. If we could park there on Sunday morning, they preferred to just pay us for the space and said, no, we don't want to ruin our parking. We don't want to ruin that playground with lots of cars on it. So they said no. Acquisition of space, we did look at buying that house that was torn down that essentially became the parking lot of the fire station. We had looked at that. When we studied it, it was close to, I think at that time when it was for sale, houses were still doing pretty well. I think it was close to $350 for that house. Then to rip it down, we figured it was close to $50,000 just to rip it down. And then to put in a parking lot and is another $50,000. Came up to be $450,000 to gain about 13 spaces. And that's where we said, you know, cost, it's just not cost efficient. I think God took care of us a little bit in that and put in a new fire station with a parking lot. Now, we have never said this out loud, but you can park there. So, in fact, our staff parks there. And that has gained us those 13 spots without the cost of $450,000. We don't tell that to the Methodist Church, by the way. So we actually talked with the Methodist Church. We actually talked about sharing buildings and trying to gain classrooms that way. And I was really proud of our space and how we have maintained it when I went into their space, because it is a good 20 years behind us in terms of maintenance. We realized that would not work out in terms of trying to use it for classrooms or any other overflow that we often need. We even talked with them. The parking was the one where we're like, well, what if we shared parking? That was the one thing they were not interested in sharing with us. By the way, it seems like a great idea to stick in a parking ramp like they have over there. If you ever talk to them, you'll realize why it's not a great idea. They have had they've had so many issues with that and so many costs, and you'll see them every once in a while trying to jack it up. It's really a nightmare, and it doesn't look that great either. So it's been a problem. Parking is continuing to be a problem. We've even looked into shuttling from Wauwatosa East High School, like what happened on Christmas Eve. I don't think too many people actually used it on Christmas Eve. I don't know, anybody raise their hand that actually used those shuttles? They used the shuttle that was available on Christmas Eve. Hopefully it helped. That was all done by the city, so we should all thank the city for thinking outside the box and trying to make a bad situation a little bit better. But we talked about that, even having a shuttle that just ran on Sunday morning at key times. And it just didn't seem to make sense in terms of finances and how many people would actually use it. Parking's a problem. We're not an inner city church, but we're a church that's landlocked. And it will be the #1 issue, I think, for quite a while. And unfortunately, it's difficult. We have talked about even having not valet, but parking attendants out. One of the thoughts we had was, what if we closed off parking lots when they got full, so people didn't waste their time driving in going, is it, oh, no, it's not, and wasting the time of coming in. So having someone that just essentially puts up a sign that says lot full, so that you're not driving and looking for space. That helps people at least get to a spot faster. But there aren't great solutions there. We're always concerned about safety in a parking lot because, as many of you know, coming around the corner, people back up, they stop there, and I think unfortunately sometimes some unchristian things happen in the parking lot, at least under your breath. We want to discourage that. We talked about even doing a drop-off zone on 76th Street like the Methodist Church has. They were grandfathered in on that though, and we thought about that as a Sunday school drop-off space on 76th, but I always think of that a little bit as a nightmare because I would really be worried about kids getting out the wrong doors into an oncoming highway. So it's not a great situation. It's our #1 issue, and we've never had a great way to answer that. If you have other ideas that you want to give us, that we're always willing to hear them, but it's tough. It is tough.
Do you have an idea how old the Methodist parking structure is? I mean, if they've been having problems with it, is it 40, 50 years old, that sort of thing?
I don't think it's quite that old, but I'm not sure. I would guess 25, 30.
And has there been a feasibility study done for something like that working here? I mean, I've been on a lot of parking structure projects, building them, and the methods we use now
Sure.
are entirely different.
You don't have what happened down at the lakefront and that kind of thing.
Well, that wasn't the structure
But, yeah.
itself failing, that was
No, I
somebody
know, I
not
know.
doing a connection on it.
No, and there's much better processes nowadays, like you said. Partly it's aesthetics too. Thinking of a parking structure, you know, is not, I even wonder if the zoning board would approve the look of that in Wauwatosa, because it just doesn't look very nice. But, so yeah, it's been difficult. We've talked, I guess I'm most concerned about those that struggle to walk far. That's why we put up those signs for people that have limited mobility. We've actually got some more signs that we're going to be putting up to try and encourage people not to park there. Because people that can't walk more than 20 feet just go home. They come, they can't park there, they just go home. And that's, you know, that's really unfortunate. So I've toyed with the idea of calling our main parking lot only for limited mobility on Sunday morning. So that those that really need that, that are not able-bodied, could have that. Obviously, you don't want it to only be half used then either, and that includes single parents that are bringing 3 kids and hauling bags and trying to get little kids and keep them close by. I mean, that's limited mobility. So we've talked about this a lot, and they're not great solutions, but so that's where we're at with it.
Hey, Chris, one follow-up.
I bet you were on one of those councils too, Greg, weren't you? That was a while ago.
I love parking. Hey, just one follow-up.
Yeah.
Phase 2 and phase 3, are we going to lose any when we do the additions? Are we going to lose any
Yeah.
spots?
We would lose, it's phase 3, we would definitely lose 1 to 2 spots in the handicap zone, which is where they always get red flags and the city doesn't like it. The discussion we've had was taking out the shed on the opposite side over by the Methodist, taking that out. We've actually talked about taking that completely out, moving the garbage into the hill with a nice enclosure so you're not looking at it, but it's also easier for our dump trucks to come in and get the garbage out. We've gained probably 2 spots over there for handicap, which probably is not going to make the city happy. I think they actually want us to actually gain a spot. So that's hard. The problem with our space is the angle of the parking lot is not conducive to handicap parking. So handicap parking needs to be more flat. So that's an issue that could possibly be some issue when we get into phase 3.
Chris, just from a historical perspective, I was on the
Try
council.
not to be the only person out there.
Yeah, well, I think maybe the only one that knows the
Maybe some other
answer
people
to it,
will
right?
stand next to me.
I was on the council back in 2000, and I don't remember what the total cost of that project was. This, I think, totals up to $5.5 million. How much was that last project, and how long did it take us to pay it off?
So, first point, on your second point, to be clear, we will not move forward on phase 2 until phase 1 is completely done, paid for. So that could be 10 years before we move into phase 2. So we're almost really only thinking about phase 1, but in order to do phase 1, to take out your boilers, we needed to think about the whole master plan. Now, if somebody came along and handed us a check for $6 million, we would do all phases. Getting back to your question, the last renovation was 2.7 with the organ. So with the organ, everything was about 2.7. Now, we paid that off in less than 10 years. As it was mentioned, we're still receiving monies towards building. We're calling it building improvements right now since we're not paying off the mortgage. We're still receiving that monies, not quite at that level of what we were at paying off that mortgage, because I think we were closer to $16,000 a month. We're close to $10,000 a month in receipts towards building improvements. So we've already, as a whole, we've collected close to $300,000 on in that fund. We've spent part of that to work on building improvements, but, so yeah, if you compare it, we're comparing it almost to a program that happened 13 years ago. So that's where the Finance Committee, even being conservative, said that should be very doable.
I have a couple quick questions. One is, where is the staging area, excuse me, for the recycling and the donations? Where is that on the plan?
Currently?
On the plan?
I don't know, where is the, thank you, Greg?
Well, for the level of schematics that we're at with the planning right now, most likely it'll occur somewhere up in this area. Scroll down just a bit. So for those of you who are not familiar, right now this is the main boiler room. This dates back to the original church, the 30s. This part through here is a mechanical room that was added 63 when the education wing was put on. Part of the goal for what we're doing is to try to consolidate. We've got a steam boiler in this room now. We've got a hot water boiler in this room now. So what we want to do as part of this is consolidate the boilers into one room and free up as much of this as possible. We're still showing this is mechanical, that is storage. We've got ideas, but nothing's dedicated yet. Our goal is to get almost all of this out of here and dedicate this whole area to storage and staging, at least for this phase of the operation. So to answer your question, I guess the recycling and the storage most likely will be able to allocate some space here and get it out of the stairway.
Okay, and then my second question is, have you considered working with a preservationist to save the murals in Lois's room and reinstall them in the new nursery?
We have not gotten to any levels like that yet.
When I met with Lois Weber about that, is Lois here? She's in her classroom teaching. And that was her main concern with that room. She hates the room, by the way. It's cold. It's really a bad room. But it's the original church nursery, and it has these beautiful murals that are in there that are historic. They're historic, I will give it that, and they are very historic. One idea that we had with Lois was possibly we could bring in somebody with a good camera and do some sort of capturing of them and then reprinting them into potentially where she would possibly move, which would be the current 8th grade Sunday school room, which is 101, which is right across the hall from the nursery, the current nursery. So current nursery, across the hall, that room there would probably be where her room, which would be nice because it's bringing all of our kids that are senior K and under into one hallway. She liked that. The murals and the historic nature of them was really the thing that she was worried about. They've been damaged over time. We've tried to repair them. Jesus' arm is kind of weird now, but you know, baby Jesus. But it's generally they've been kept up, and we want to try and do something, and probably photography and printing them. And we're not exactly sure, but we don't want to completely lose them before that room gets renovated. So, yeah. It won't be a great option. It won't be a perfect solution. You can't just peel the walls off and move them, but we'll try and do something so we actually capture them in some way, shape.
Point of order, we're running a little bit out of time. We'll take more questions. There are going to be other informational meetings, but I will take one last question. Corey, do you have someone else?
No, unless somebody has something.
Okay.
Did you have, hold on, you got one?
Sure.
Yep, make sure everybody can.
Yes, would it be useful for this process to price out the components of phase one, meaning, for example, the kitchen project? I realize they're interrelated, the heating and ventilating, fire sprinkler system, etc.
And we have. We've done initial cost estimates on that. That's where we came up with that number.
Would that be available for us when we make decisions and consider this?
Once we get into actual building, you will have firm numbers on everything. So right now it's estimates. By the way, we have 4 sets of drawings around the room, and I'm going to ask committee members to kind of go there before our closing prayer with Pastor Margaret. But we wanted to have building committee members that could answer direct questions at the plans 1, 2, 3, and 4, if people have direct questions. So otherwise.
Before, I also would encourage everyone to take the survey, fill it out. Your feedback is important. if it's written feedback, that's an excellent way for us to codify that and to analyze what's coming from you. Pastor Mark, thank you.
Let's pray. Gracious God, as we come here this morning, we thank you for the gift of these plans, for the excitement that comes as we imagine what this place could be and the ministry that could come from these changes. We thank you for the gifts of all those people who worked on this committee to come to this place and their willingness to serve and the ideas that are brought forward here as a congregation. We just ask that you continue to walk with us and help us to discern the best way to move this congregation forward in ministry to your word and your way. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Before we go, just one last thing. If you really want to talk to any one of us directly, we'd be happy to do that. We really do want to get your comments. Please fill out that survey. Even if you have no thoughts on it, you're just like, sounds good, that's great. We want to hear that. We really do, because there will be other people that don't feel that way. So it's nice to balance out and get a sense. Surveys are going in this box over here on the table.